I'm surprised to hear that Terence Crawford thinks he only has a 70% chance of beating Canelo Alvarez. If you guys know me, you know the channel, you guys know that I'm going with Crawford to beat Canelo Alvarez. I believe that Crawford's going to beat Canelo in a decision. I don't think he's going to knock him out. I don't think Crawford has the firepower, the punching power to really stop a guy like Canelo, because Canelo has a great chin. He's very durable. Not the best conditioning, but like I said, great chin, great punch resistance. He's a strong guy, so obviously I don't see Crawford knocking out Canelo Alvarez. But for Terence Crawford to be saying that he's only 70% confident that he beats Canelo, 70% is, more than 50, right? That's better than 50%, but ultimately, I think, Crawford should be saying he's 100% sure, because 70% isn't obviously 100. And you'd think a guy like Terence Crawford with Bud's mentality, you'd think he's going to say 100%, but he said 70% confident that he's going to beat Canelo. So, I still favor Bud in this fight, but you can't help but think, like, why is he only saying 70%? We don't really know. We'll have to see fight night. Maybe there is something that Crawford's a little bit worried about. Maybe he is worried about if he does get clipped. That's always a concern in the sport of boxing, but I still think Crawford wins this fight. I think it's a close fight regardless, but I'm leaning towards Crawford because you guys know I talk about the conditioning all the time, but I really do think it's going to play a factor. And Canelo's low punch output and his footwork is what I'm worried about. Crawford, he's not a stationary target. Yeah, he likes to be offensive and sit in the pocket a little bit, but he's a counter puncher by nature. So in order to set that up, he's going to use his feet and not be a stationary target to get Canelo where he wants him in order to, prepare for that counter attack, right? That's what Crawford's going to do, but I feel like, he should really be 100% sure. I don't know why he's saying that he's only 70% sure he's beating Canelo. Also another thing, people keep asking him about, starting camp and whatnot. So his fight is September 13th, right? Currently, it's the last week of June, so Bud would have all of July and August. People are like, why isn't he training? Why isn't he training? Because Crawford has said, I didn't start training camp yet. You guys got to understand, like, training camp usually goes 6 to 8 weeks for these fighters. So people are saying, like, why isn't he in training camp? Like, do you guys know how boxers usually operate? It's usually a 6 to 8 week camp max, so I'm not worried about Crawford and whether or not, he's in shape and whether or not he's training hard enough, because he literally said he doesn't want to overtrain for this fight because he goes really hard for, those few months. And ultimately, I think that's part, of the weight. It's part of the weight. I think he feels like he's going to be comfortable enough to the point where, like, he doesn't have to necessarily start the crazy training right now because he's not cutting as much weight. He doesn't have to get his weight that low. If he was cutting to 47 or 54, he'd probably start getting a little bit leaner now, but he's going to keep that weight on. And, you guys see the face-offs. They don't look that different in size. And I always say, like, people make a lot of this about the size, right? Everybody talks about Canelo's, naturally a 68-pounder, but I never think he's actually a natural 68-pounder. I think Canelo's naturally a 160-pounder. So for him to go up to 68, I'm not saying he can't, beat guys at 68 because he's done it already. Canelo's obviously cleaned out a lot of that division and he has all the belts. So much respect to Canelo, but that doesn't mean, that's your natural weight class. That doesn't mean that's the best version of you. I think the best version of Canelo's at 160 because, like I said, Canelo's much slower, and it's apparent with the weight class that, as he's gone up, he's gotten a little bit slower. The gas tank has failed him at times, and that shows up in the ring. Like the William Skull fight, everybody knows that William Skull wasn't trying to fight him, but at the end of the day, Canelo's got to step on that gas and try to corner him and land something, crazy. I feel like Canelo just didn't give 100% in that fight, and I know he fought an opponent that was moving, but you got to do better than that. You got to give the fans something that they really want to see, because at the end of the day, Canelo said in the post-fight interview, that's why I don't like fighting guys like that. And then, he's basically alluding to the fact that he doesn't like fighting movers. Now, if Crawford is moving, he goes in there with the game plan of, yeah, I'm going to engage, but I'm going to know when to get out and use my feet and not be a stationary target, then I don't see how Canelo catches up with a guy like Crawford who's faster than him, who has faster feet, faster hands. I don't know. I don't see it. You know, Crawford has the better conditioning as well, so it's hard to pick Canelo in my opinion, but I obviously see, you know, the weight classes are there for a reason, and that at 168, Canelo's performed there before. He's fought bigger guys, hurt bigger guys, but the thing is, it's hard to catch a smaller fighter because they're much faster, much more elusive. So that's why I still favor Terence Crawford. Just shocked to hear that he's only 70% confident. You know, 70% may sound like a lot, but I think, you know, Crawford, he's that type of guy that should be saying 100%. Because he's just that much of a competitor. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about Terence Crawford saying he's 70% confident he beats Canelo Alvarez. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys on the next Nabs Boxing video. Peace.